BBC Essex, 22 minutes past 12 on Boxing Day.
Now, earlier this year, Ian and I had a great opportunity to travel on the Waverley, the lovely old paddle steamer, the last seagoing paddle steamer in the world. And it was running trips around the Essex coast, around the Thames estuary. And one of the days was a trip to the old Essex wartime forts, which were the home of many pirate radio stations back in the 1960s. If you have a long memory, you might remember Radio 390 and Radio City being some of the biggest names to use those forts as pirate radio stations. And one of the leading DJs, in fact, the head DJ from Radio City, a guy called Tom Edwards, who you might have remembered from Pirate BBC Essex when we recreated the sound of pirate radio. Tom Edwards was, as I say, the head DJ on Radio City for years back in the 1960s. And he'd never been back to the Thames Fort since the day he left in 1967, when he closed the station down for the last time.
Well, it was an absolute honour to be able to travel with Tom Edwards back out to the Thames Forts on the Waverley and take him back to see his home for many years on that rusty old wartime fort. The whole day had been the brainchild of Waverley volunteer Tim Wardley, who helps out the Waverley when she's down this part of the country. And he welcomed us all on board as we got on for the end of Southend Pier.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard our special pirate radio cruise aboard Waverley this afternoon. And a warm welcome to all our special guests from the world of radio this afternoon. Candy Calvert, the daughter of Reg Calvert, who of course played a significant part in the history of pirate radio. And of course our two stars of the show, Keith Skews and Tom Edwards. Welcome one and all.
Well, this is the rumblings of the Waverley paddle steamer, the only one of its kind that's left in this country. It's 78 years of age. I'm a little bit older than that, and it's Tom Edwards. I'm back at sea. This is extraordinary. I'm tracing my steps over 57 years. The last time I was out here was February the 8th, 1967. And Radio City had something of a turbulent history. With a takeover bid, the station was raided, and our boss man, unfortunately, got killed in that, a man called Reg Calvert. And Dorothy Calvert, his widow, took over. Reg had two daughters, both Susan and Candy Calvert. I'm delighted to tell you folks that Candy Calvert has come out and joined us on this trip, so it's going to be awesome gliding up towards the Shivering Sands Towers, where we first and last met all those years ago. So both very happy, very sad, and very tragic times back then, but yeah, I'm reliving quite a few memories, and most of them are good ones.
And once Reg lost his life and eventually Radio City came to a close, it was your job to close down the station.
It did, embedded in my brain. And Dorothy Calvert, who took over the running of the station, sent me a sealed letter. She sent me a note which was so brief, which says, "Dear Tom, we've been found guilty of illegal broadcasting and the station has to close down at midnight tonight." So I got together what few disc jockeys were on the station with me and the engineer, so I decided for the final hour, and it was so brief, that maybe we might play a bit of music, I thought. But in fact, we guys just chatted for the last hour as we built up to midnight. And Dorothy had instructed that we close down the station. And I closed down the station that night at dead on midnight. And being the great royalist that I always have been, I played the national anthem. And the transmitter was switched off and Radio City went up into the ether forever. Well, I've just seen those iconic towers at my home for 2 long years. Very mixed feelings of seeing Shivering Sands. I stayed on for a few days sorting out all the records because Reg Calvert had made me senior DJ, so I had to log. Lots of commercials had to be logged. So a lot of paperwork to do, so I finally left with an Australian disc jockey called RWB, Ross Brown. And he kept looking back at the towers when we finally got onto Harvester 2. And he said, "You're not looking back at the towers, Tom." I said, "No, I'm never going to look back on them." In fact, I've overgone that rule now 57 years later, and I'm so pleased I've come back.
We saw some rope ladders hanging from the forts, but they look at obviously in quite a dilapidated condition now. How on earth did you used to get on and off the forts back in the 60s?
Even now, it still gives me nightmares. Harvester 2 would pull alongside the towers at Shivering Sands. Sometimes in weather like this, we're sort of swaying to and fro, but sometimes in a storm force 10, which is terribly dangerous. No health and safety regulations on pirate radio, believe me. So they would send down this pallet piece of wood with a bit of thick rope hanging in the middle of it. So I'd clutch onto it very tightly and just be hoisted up by a crane, which would sometimes break down halfway up there. So 90 feet, so I'm dangling in the air. I've seen picture evidence of that. They exist on social media. I thought I must have been mad, but hey, I was in my 20s. The world was my oyster, and to a certain extent still is. It was an exciting time, but also very dangerous.
We are really being buffeted on the paddle steamer Waverley at the moment. It's quite choppy. When you were on board those forts that we can still see as we look to our right now, did you get a sense that you were at sea, or were they so sturdy that you barely realised that you were in the middle of the Thames?
No, we knew we were at sea because they either used to shake, and actually the Shivering Sands towers were built on the sands that actually shifted. So the forts would slightly move, so you could feel that. But having just seen the forts, I've remembered another anecdote, is that the man-made catwalk that Tony Pine, a Radio City engineer, made, and took a lot of trouble making it sturdy and secure. If somebody ran across the catwalk, it would shake the forts on either side. So yeah, they would move around. In a storm force 10, they had to move like an aircraft's wing. If an aircraft hits bad weather, if you look at the wing very carefully, it's alarming. The wing does actually bend, and it was the same with Guy Maunsell's design of the forts. Yeah.
Can you believe, looking at them now, that you spent so much of your time working and living on board them?
Yeah, it was tough at times, especially in the winter when the weather got bad. And also I started to get concerned on Radio City if Freddie Downs, we couldn't rely on him coming with fresh water. You can't drink a cup of tea made out of seawater. And also we had the hot water system running with all the radiators working. But if we ran out of water, we still ran out of food, and you can't wash in seawater. So we were limited. We were reliant on our friends on shore. And we had a safety code on Radio City. So if we were in trouble, we had a signal on Radio City, and we would play Reg's pop group that he owned and managed, which is the Fortunes. And if we played the Fortunes singing their big hit records, "You've Got Your Troubles," that told our friends, both in our London office and in Whitstable, that we needed help of some kind.
So you said you wouldn't look back when you left in February 1967. Today we've come back for the first time since. Are you pleased you've made the trip?
I'm ever so pleased. Candy Calvert by my side. We were hugging on to each other. So I'm pleased she's here. A day to remember.
Oh, it's wonderful memories, and I'm so happy to be here. And I'm so glad that Tom contacted me and asked me to come out for the day. It's been absolutely wonderful. Memories don't stop. All week I've been remembering everything,
Have you been out to the fort since those days?
No, I haven't. No, not at all. It's been quite hard, the memories of my father and the sea as well. I'm not a good sailor. So.
But of course your dad lost his life through his associations with pirate radio and everything that went on in those days, so it must be for you a very mixed feeling today.
Yes, it is. Yes, he lost his life for the youth of the day. He was always doing everything for the youngsters all through his life. All the music he created with the rock groups and the dance halls he ran, and then he always wanted to start a radio station. And he and Screaming Lord Sutch of the day, who's now died, unfortunately, they concocted this idea to have a pirate radio station. They found the forts, and it went from there. Lots of memories.
And even after your dad lost his life, Mum Dorothy carried on with Radio City for some time.
Yes, she did, until it was shut down. And that was very sad, very, very sad.
The Shivering Sands forts now are sort of fading into the distance behind us as Waverley heads on her way. Did you ever think you'd be back here seeing them?
I always wanted to be, but I never had the opportunity. So it was really, really wonderful when Tom phoned and said, would I like to come? So put that one to bed. It's, the ghosts, the demons are over with now, But it was a wonderful life, wonderful,
And how wonderful to be here with Tom Edwards, who said those final words on the 8th of February 1967 to close the station down.
That was heartbreaking. That happened, and voice, Tom's voice so clear and final. That was that we're going off there. That's it. Finished. It's just. It just all comes back so much. So vivid. And I can't believe it's so long ago. And I wish my son had been a part of this. I wish he'd known my father, because I think they'd have got on really, really well.
If you're leaving us here at Southend, very much want to thank you for sailing aboard today's special Swinging 60s Pirate Radio cruise to the forts. I very much hope you've all enjoyed yourselves aboard the world's last seagoing paddle steamer, and we do hope to see you again. Have a very good evening and good night, and safe travels wherever you're heading. Thank you.
What a nostalgic day that was, wasn't it?
It was special. Thank you to everyone at the Waverley, in particular Tim Wardley, for coming up with the idea of a swinging pirate radio 60s cruise out to the forts with some of the old DJs. A privilege for me to be able to chat to them whilst they were watching the forts for the first time since the 60s. You were on the mic, on the PA around the Waverley, Steve, for the interviewing them for the literally hundreds of people that were on that trip. It was something we won't forget.
Certainly was a great day, and thanks to Tom Edwards for allowing us to be part of his emotional reunion with the forts.
Yeah, and great to meet Candy too.
BBC